It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and we're starting a brand new year off with 1997, January 3rd, 1997, and because there's no real new releases to really look at here, I think I'd use this for another one of the annual Leftovers episodes. This is the 1996 Leftovers episode, and I've got a list right here. We've got 8 movies here, and for this particular one, I decided to do something a little bit different. I'm not just going to cover movies that were in theaters. I'm going to cover some movies from television as well as TV, as well as on direct-to-video, because there were some notable movies here that are worth talking about. And why not waste it? If we got 8 movies to look at here, so I'm not going to waste any more time with it, let's just jump on into it. And we'll start off with the first movie that came to mind when I put this list together, and that is the Disney direct-to-video sequel, Aladdin and the King of Thieves. Of course, this is the continuation of the Aladdin story that started, of course, with the 1992 movie, was then followed with the direct-to-video sequel, Return of Jafar, which that led into the Aladdin TV series, and this is this movie that's going to wrap everything up. And Return of Jafar was not a bad movie per se. It was definitely underwhelming compared to the original Aladdin movie, but this was only Disney's second direct-to-video sequel they ever did, which is amazing when you consider how many they would do later on down the road. But with Aladdin and the King of Thieves, you definitely see they get a major step up in the terms of quality, the animation, and overall the far superior sequel to come out at that point. But then again, it was only 2 movies. But does it make it a worthy follow-up to Aladdin? Sort of, but let me put it this way. You can definitely give the movie credit for tackling more of the story of Aladdin's father and his mysterious past. The father is voiced by Jonathan Rhys-Davies. He does a fine job in the role, but the big problem with the storyline is that they're definitely trying their hardest to create this long-lost father-son bond, and the movie just can't quite make it simple enough for the audience to understand. In fact, it kind of makes it more convoluted because neither Aladdin nor his father's motivations make a lot of sense. They kind of flip-flop on several occasions throughout the movie, and because of that, the subplot that should be interesting, considering this is made for kids, is not really interesting because most kids would be very confused by what they had seen. Also, Jasmine's kind of a downturn in this movie. She doesn't really get a whole lot to do here. She's kind of relegated once again to the damsel in distress. And at least in the last movie, in the TV series, they gave her more to do. But she's probably not given all that much to do because of the fact that Robin Williams is back as the genie. Now, that's why I wanted to bring this up here, because there's a little bit of an interesting history between what happened with the first Aladdin and Robin Williams. I talked about it then, how Robin Williams was not upset because the genie was the main focus of the marketing for Aladdin, which in the end helped out the movie overall, but it kind of went against what Robin Williams was supposed to had him to deal with Disney, and he basically, for a long period of time, wanted nothing to do with them. So they reconciled, they got back to it, and Robin Williams came back to play the genie again for the King of Thieves, and it's kind of a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. Not because Dan Castellaneta, who had played the genie in the TV series as well as Return of Jafar, was bad or anything, but it's good because Robin Williams is back as the genie, and a lot of his stuff does get a genuine good laugh, but at the same time, it seems a lot more like the focus is put more on the genie to do more shtick because of that deal that Williams got to come back, and so in a way, you're essentially kind of dreading his return on screen, although he still gives you good laughs in return. Again, it's kind of a seesaw on what's good and what's bad. The music overall is very well done. This is Carl Johnson and Mark Waters giving a nice composition to the film to give it a more epic feel. The animation overall is incredible. It's amazing that this was done by the same team that did the series, and they go above and beyond with the budget that they had to give this a huge, epic, proper send-off. I mean, there's notable improvements in terms of more lighting and shading. Some of the more emotional and heavy scenes are here. It's like giving on a budget on the level of something like a Goofy movie. This would have looked so much like the first movie again at some points, and for a direct-to-video sequel, it definitely does manage to use its budget to good use. I also did appreciate how it does bookend the Aladdin storyline, with the film ending in the same way that the first movie started, with the peddler telling a story, and while it's not voiced by Robin Williams this time around, it's since been confirmed that the peddler was Genie all along, so that's a nice little contribution they made to the film. Overall, I think this is definitely a step up from Return of Jafar in terms of the better animation, the better storytelling, the better action. There's more effort being put into it. And if you're going to watch an Aladdin sequel, this is probably the best one to watch. If not only is it an enjoyable movie, but it does a very good job of bookending the story over that 4-year span and essentially putting a great end to another Arabian Night. So that is Aladdin and the King of Thieves. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next movie I have on this list here, and that is The Late Shift. So why am I bringing up The Late Shift? Well, The Late Shift is, of course, based off of the book by Bill Carter, talking about the controversial decision to put Jay Leno as the host of the Tonight Show over David Letterman, and the back and forth that happened between the two. And this is a film that I was really looking forward to because I had read the book. I was really invested in this, especially during the late night war that happened between Jay Leno and Conan O'Brien for the Tonight Show in 2010. So this is my first time seeing that movie back then. And right off the bat, you can kind of see what the first problem with the movie is, and that is John Michael Higgins as David Letterman. Not to say that John Michael Higgins is a bad actor, but for some reason, they give David Letterman red hair. He looks more like Conan O'Brien than David Letterman. I mean, why red hair? Like, why is that something that they needed to add to that? Why not just go with David Letterman's real hair at the time back then, like the real hair color? It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, but at the same time, you look at Jay Leno, who's played by Daniel Roebuck in this movie, and he actually does kind of look like Jay Leno. They do a good job of getting the chin too, and he does a good job with the mannerisms as well. I think it is a very solid. I think that's a better job than what they did with David Letterman in here. But on top of that, but then again, this goes back to a lot of the problems that I have with the movie, because they kind of change things around from the book, and it's just like for example, there's a part where they're cutting away to New York after these two executives from CBS see Jay Leno and try to get him to replace Pat Sajak for the host of their late night show. And they cut away to New York and David Letterman, who's finishing an interview with Sandra Bernhard, which, by the way, the credits literally have it in the casting, and Sandra Bernhard as herself. Like, she's part of the main cast, even though this scene is the only scene that she's in the entire movie. It's just like I don't know if it was her contract that she had to be in part of the main cast or something, but she's literally in the movie for that one segment in the beginning, and then that's it. She's gone. But David Letterman's also seen as kind of a dick in this movie. He's kind of seen as a petty child. Like, he's incredibly bitter for no reason whatsoever. They don't give you a reason to root for Letterman here, even though he's the one who's getting royally screwed over by NBC pretty much. It's like the movie's trying to make the argument that this is what he was in real life, when there's clearly none of that whatsoever. I mean, it's just off. It's just really, really off on how they portrayed this character. One of the highlight characters is Kathy Bates playing Helen Kushnick, who, funnily enough, filed a $30 million lawsuit against Bill Carter, saying that the way she was portrayed in this movie was completely not true, even though it is kind of what it essentially did eventually turn out to be, when you have people talking about what she was in real life, because this woman that Pat Bates is playing died 6 months before the movie came out. 6 months after this movie came out, I should say. So, I don't know, that's a tough thing to really say about it. But one of the other things that I really didn't like about the movie is that Jay Leno and David Letterman really do not have any screen time in this movie. There's one scene where you see the two of them together, and it's during an Emmys, I think it's an after party, and they go their separate ways, and that's the only time you ever see them together on screen. So it's just like this happened in 1992, and you would think that maybe there would have been some more scenes with them, but they just completely go away. Like, there's no real point to it whatsoever of how they did that, and of why not have them in more scenes. And then you kind of get the behind-the-scenes stuff from the book. You hear about how Jay Leno was offered $6 million to go to CBS. You hear about how Brandon Tartikoff left NBC, and Helen Kushnick essentially put the thing in the New York Post saying that NBC wanted Carson out and put Jay Leno in. That stuff actually happened. And then you get to the fall release schedule scene, where Johnny Carson announces his big retirement from The Tonight Show. And if you look at the schedule in the background, it's the schedule for the year after this, so they didn't even bother to check the timeline, because that's the schedule for 92, because Cosby's not on there, Night Court's not on there, Mad About You is on there. That schedule did not take place until 1992. And then it cuts to Johnny Carson, who here is played by Rich Little, it's Rich Little. Rich Little is known for doing these impersonations of different celebrities very well, but the face, the makeup on him, like, what is, when you see him as Johnny Carson in this, it's just kind of like, what the hell am I looking at here? Like, you got the voice down, but that does not look like Johnny Carson whatsoever. And it's interesting because in the book, Carson's talking about a humorous story, and he kind of plants it in the middle that he's leaving The Tonight Show, even going as far as to say he's leaving on this specific date, May 22nd, 1992. But in the movie, he's just out there saying, hey, I'm leaving on May 22nd, 1992, see you later, and then just leaves. Like, never comes back again until the end of the movie, and it's just like you could easily buy into the feeling that these two had a good time together in real life, Johnny Carson and David Letterman, because David Letterman has Johnny on the show that same day, who comes in, and But in that scene, when they reenact the scene in the movie, Little and Higgins seem really forced. Like, they have too many moments of uncontrollable laughter in there. Plus, you have that continuing prevalence of Letterman hating his job so much so that you wonder why he even wants the Tonight Show in the first place. It's just like this movie, like I said, it clearly makes David Letterman look like the main, the bad guy in this. Like, it's amazing how they pull this off. But I'm kind of running down the movie overall, so I'll just kind of make this quick here. Some of the other things I liked Treat Williams as Mike Ovitz. I think he does a very good job in here. It's completely unlike the real Michael Ovitz, but Treat Williams is a very good actor, and this is probably one of his strongest roles as a actor. I mean, I really enjoyed this movie a whole lot, and for the most part, it does play itself close enough to Bill Carter's original book, but at the same time, it tries way too hard to build up some of the more dramatic moments in there. The recreations of some of the more key moments are way off. Higgins Letterman is way too angry at himself to be likable. It does seem like this movie version makes the argument that Jay is the true hero here, and Letterman's the one-sided jackass who just can't get the hint. And with all that said, it does a good enough job to get entertainment out of it. It's directed by Betty Thomas, who did the Brady Bunch movie and would have Private Parts come out this year. But I think the cast overall does a decent job filling the roles that they have. If you want the history of this infamous late-night warrior, I'd say read the book. You get more of an experience out of it. But the movie itself is okay. Just don't go in expecting a masterpiece. So, well, now that I've wasted 6 minutes on that, I actually should do a full review on this, because this would be fascinating to talk about in a full review. But I'm already taking up too much of your time here. So let's just go ahead and get to the next film, and that is Project Alf. So this was the movie that was supposed to wrap up everything that the series couldn't do, because what happened was that NBC changed their plans for the last season of Alf to have one extra episode, so the storyline they had set up in the final episode could be resolved in a two-part finale. But the first half aired with a to be continued, but the network decided to cancel the show after 5 years, and so it took them 6 years to really go back to the story and to finish and to wrap it up. And right from the get-go with this movie, you feel like this is not really intended to be an actual finale, a real conclusion, because for the most part, like most of the characters from the Alf TV series, the Tanner family is nowhere to be found in this movie. None of the actors from that movie show up. The only person that really does show up in this is Beverly Archer, who was Mrs. Byrne on the TV series, but she plays somebody else completely in this movie. And I think that's one of the reasons why this movie doesn't work so well, is because for something that you're advertising as the final chapter of Alf, the story that was supposed to be in the final episode, it just doesn't work here. And it's just, as much as I'd like to see Paul Fusco returning as Alf in this character again, like, it just doesn't work as well as I think it should. They have a lot of good people in this movie: Martin Sheen, Ray Walston, Ed Begley Jr., Miguel Ferrer. But when you're not concluding the story that you had set up beforehand, what's the point of even making this movie if you're trying to just get people to get the hype up so maybe you can start this up again? And I mean, I don't know. I mean, to me personally, I didn't think it did this show any justice by not having the conclusion that they promised 6 years ago. It just felt like a movie that was trying to be the starting point for a potential new series instead of being the actual finale to a series that was canceled just a little bit ahead of its time, or a little bit before it was time. But then again, even Paul Fusco himself made a recent joke of it in the Simpsons Couch Check, saying that no, it ended at the right time. And I still like seeing Alf on every once in a while. He had that show on TV Land, which was kind of an amusing idea, but not really that great overall. But anytime this guy returns to this role, it is fun to see this character again. I just wish we got a real proper finale to the series instead of just a movie that was disguising itself as a finale, but it was really just a TV movie to try to get the series going again. Yeah, not a very good film. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next movie I have on here, and that is Welcome to the Dollhouse. Yeah, this movie gets pretty deep, and I was actually surprised when I did this on Box Office Mojo, and I tried to look for this movie on there. It was not on any of the box office that I saw on there. It came out on May 24th, 1996, and this is one of the notable movies that came out that year because it was a film that was on many people's Best of the Year list. It was considered a big hit overall, critically and critically, and I mean, like I said, it's a movie that has held the test of time because you can still watch this movie and still get a lot of deep material out of it. I mean, Heather Matarazzo is great as the little girl in here. It's got a really good cast overall here, a really solid story to tell, and it's a really fun little black comedy. It's a film that really is well done, visually pleasing to look at. It's an amazing looking film, and it's just a really amazing film that I was really surprised it was not on the list when I did this weekend in particular. But I'm glad I got to do this to check this out again recently, because this movie's actually really damn good. I mean, it's a really solid, gripping, insanely intelligent black comedy that, again, still holds up over 30 years later, and almost 30 years later, I should say. But I really enjoyed this movie. I really think people should go out and look for it if you haven't seen it already. It's definitely one of the best independent movies to come out during the decade of the 90s. So that's Welcome to the Dollhouse. Let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, and that is Theodore Rex. So let's talk about this movie, because there is a lot to digest in here. First off, Whoopi Goldberg basically agreed to star in this in '92, and she tried to back out, but one of the producers of the film, Richard Gilbert Abramson, actually filed a $20 million lawsuit against Goldberg, which was settled quickly, and she agreed to star in the film for $7 million, two more than what was originally agreed upon. And one of the attorneys on the case basically said it was similar to what happened with Kim Basinger when she tried to back out of Boxing Helena. But more importantly, this movie was originally supposed to go to theaters in Christmas of '95. But they basically said that what they said at first was that a glut of competition, a rush on post-production work, and the effects-heavy film led New Line Cinema to delay the film. They were going to release it to coincide with Whoopi Goldberg hosting the Oscars that year, but then they decided to release it on video. They took a movie that had a huge budget. I think last time when I talked about this, I said it was $80 million, but it was actually much less than that. But this is still pretty expensive. $33.5 million. They took a $33 million budgeted movie, shelved it to video, and it instantly made it the most expensive direct-to-video release at the time, which, when you do that, that's going to be the case. But they did this because this movie failed in test marketing in Vegas, Memphis, Portland, Maine, Providence. Bottom line, this is a bad movie. This is a terrible, terrible movie. I mean, it's got promise to it. The idea of a buddy cop movie with a human cop and a dinosaur could lead to something really funny and clever. But again, you need really good talent to make it work. And Whoopi Goldberg can be very good. The guy who plays the Theodore Rex, George Newbern, who was in Father of the Bride and also later will play Superman, he's a good actor. He's been in some decent stuff, but man, this writer and director they got, somebody who doesn't even have any other movies besides this movie. You don't give a first-timer a movie like this. Jonathan Buttel's the director here. And I don't know if he's a first-timer or not, but when you go to Wikipedia, there's no link to anything he's ever done. So I'm just going to take it that this is his first movie he ever made. And that was your first mistake right there. You should have gotten somebody else to try to make this work. And write a better script, too, because, man, this is not a good script at all. Even the visual effects, which can look pretty cool at times, really does not look good here in this movie. This is Jim Henson's Creature Shop doing the animatronics on here, and it's just like, ugh, just like, this is an ugly, ugly movie that's just like, wow. It also would help if your main characters were likable people, but you don't like Teddy whatsoever. You do not like this dude because he's so obnoxious, he's so annoying, and like, his big thing is that he uses his tail to whip people around, and that's supposed to be comedy. He loves cookies, that's comedy too. And Whoopi Goldberg's not even that written well either. I mean, it's just like, it's a mess. It's a huge, huge mess of a movie, and I cannot believe that they went this direction with it and didn't realize that this was not going to fly whatsoever with the people that they have behind it. Again, get a better writer, get a better director, get a better idea of what you want to do, and then you might have had something, but this is garbage. This is a garbage film, but it's one of the most notable movies to come out in '96 because of the story behind the scenes. So let's try to lighten the mood a little bit. Let's talk about some re-releases that came out that year, including starting off with one of my favorite movies of all time. The movie is, of course, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which was celebrating its 25th anniversary and was re-released in the theaters in July of '96. So, This is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love the creative energy to its casting, the setting, the overall story elements. Gene Wilder does a great job representing Willy Wonka as both the adult that he is on the outside and the child he is on the inside. You can also see the joy that he takes in this role. He's happy to be involved with this film. The kids are memorable. Of course, you're going to like Charlie the most out of everybody, but they definitely, you like the kids for how just they have no remorse in their lives whatsoever, which makes it all the more enjoyable when they get their comeuppance, and it's just so hilarious and fun to see what happens there. The songs are very catchy and memorable. The movie ends with a good message about how if you're not irresponsible, good things will happen to you, and the way it's portrayed in the final scenes are nicely done. There are scenes that are not that great, even though I like the tunnel scene. It just feels like one of those moments that are completely out of nowhere, dark and pointless, but again, it's not a bad thing per se. I still really enjoy it, but it is kind of pointless. But then again, that's kind of the charm of the movie here, and it's just like, this movie is such a classic compared to and doesn't even compare to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which I like that movie. I just don't think it's that great of a film overall, but Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is just a great family classic that I grew up to love as a kid, and it's simply one of the best. Needless to say, I love this movie to death. I'll watch it anytime it comes on TV. It's a classic movie. That's all I really got to say about it. So let's go ahead and move on to the other re-release I wanted to bring up, and that is the re-release of Vertigo. So this was essentially part of a plan that they actually put in place almost 15 years prior to this movie getting re-released. The plan was going to be Rear Window, The Trouble with Harry, Rope, The Man Who Knew Too Much, and Vertigo. But as far as I know, this is the only one that I've seen that actually did get a re-release that I know came out in 1996. Not saying that Rear Window, The Man Who Knew Too Much, Trouble with Harry, and Rope didn't get re-releases up at that point, but this is the only one that I know that got a theatrical release and a release date from 1996. And of course, this is directed by Alfred Hitchcock. It features Jimmy Stewart and Kim Novak, and it's a really great film. It's a really great film that showcases everything that you can expect from an Alfred Hitchcock movie. It's got these gorgeous shots that still look amazing after all these years, and a great climax at the end that you do not see coming whatsoever. And I think that's very bold and unique for what they did, especially for 1958. That must have been a big surprise when that came out. But this particular re-release was seen as kind of controversial because they restored color. They actually created new audio with modern sound effects mixed in using DTS digital sound. And the restoration actually premiered in October of '96. And they had to do this because the original negatives, the colors were fading. And so a new negative was created from the silver separation masters. But in many instances, it was impossible because of differential separation shrinkage. And because the 1958 separations were poorly made, they actually had to use 3 individual films, one from each of the primary colors, to make sure that, and they also had to shrunk in different and erratic proportions to make the realignments impossible to do, which in the end, it was seen as kind of controversial, and they actually did a better 4K restoration of it in 2014, where they basically, they put in some previously unknown stereo soundtracks. They removed some of the excessive Foley that was in the restoration, and it's a much better version than what we got in this 96 version. I've never seen this 96 one, so I can't really say for certain, but this is not the first time that Universal would add modern sounding to a classic film, because they did that with Scarface. When they re-released it on Blu-ray for the first time, there was clearly a much different track that they used for Scarface, because the sound effects from the explosions in there in particular were much more clearer and more bigger and grander than they were in the original release. I'm not going to show you the difference here, but you can definitely look for that stuff online. But so it was an interesting re-release, to say the least. I don't really have much more to say about Vertigo itself. I mean, it's a classic movie. It's one of Hitchcock's most memorable films for a good reason. Some amazing shots, a great ending, great acting from Stewart and Novak. Not much more I can say about it that hasn't already been said. Vertigo is a pretty damn good movie. So, on to the last film. Let's see it as one of the worst movies of 1996, and that is Mad Dog Time. And sadly, that's the crux of this movie. People show up, names you know, and they get killed off. I mean, if you had a better script, maybe this could work, but if that's really all this movie is, then what's the point of even making it? It's kind of like the equivalent to Mars Attacks, where you have all these big names in here, except they get killed off in these ways here, and the jokes aren't really all that funny. I mean, Jeff Goldblum, Richard Dreyfuss, Gabriel Byrne, Ellen Barkin, Diane Lane, Gregory Hines, Kyle MacLachlan, Burt Reynolds, Henry Silva, Angie Everhart, Billy Idol, Paul Anka, Rob Reiner, Joey Bishop, Richard Pryor. There's names in this movie, and it's just like how do you not make a movie this good? Well, it comes back to what happened with Theodore Rex. I mean, you have a director who does not really have a good track record. He's not made a ton of movies, and I think that's really one of the biggest problems with the film is that it's just not fun. There's no fun whatsoever. It's a boring movie. You have all these good talents here, and there's just nothing there to really make it worth it in the end. I mean, it's a pretty bad movie. It was seen on the Worst of the Year list, especially by Siskel and Ebert, who basically said watching this movie is not preferable to 1 hour and 45 minutes of looking at a blank wall, and that should just tell you everything you need to know about this movie, how bad it is. I mean, it's a lackluster film to say the least. It's one of the worst movies of the year, and I wanted to bring that up in here, so that's Mad Dog time. So those are the 1996 leftovers. When we get back here on the next episode, we'll have the first three films of 97 to look at, including the horror film, The Relic. We also have First Strike, Jackie Chan's First Strike, and also Turbulence, the airplane thriller. So January is not usually a very good month for movies, but we'll see if one of these three films actually does end up being worth it in the end on the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time, and until then, as always, take care.